So in the poem, we have actually two different meanings. Number one, the first meaning is the big match or the cricket big match. And the next meaning is the wax match we used to ignite fire. So if you refer to the poem very carefully, you can find both meanings. This is what we call ambiguous or else ambiguity, where when we refer to the title of the poem, it is quite where we can give different interpretations. So same idea is given under the literary technique called pun, right? So some people argue the fact that, okay, in this particular poem, we have the pun or else run on words. When we read the title of the poem, you will realize that, okay, there are different meanings, different interpretations can be taken. That is what we call pun. Now, if you refer to this particular picture, you can get a very good idea about what do you mean by pun, right? Now, let's refer to the picture. Now, here, if you refer to the picture, right? Hey, man, how are you? Right? Hey, man, how are you? That is the question actually raised. So he has given an answer. Thanks, I am well. Thanks, I am well. So you have two different meanings. Number one, you are doing well. Physically, you are doing well without having any problem, without having any disease, right? Without having any disability, you are doing well. That is one idea. The second idea can be seen from the picture. This is called pun. Now, I think you can understand. What do you mean by pun? Now, he is asking a question. What is the question? Hey, man, how are you? So the answer is given here. Thanks, I am well. So thanks, I am well means there are two different meanings that we can take. Number one, we can refer to, okay, he is doing well, right? Physically, without any disease, he is doing well. What is the other idea? The other idea is that he is well. Well means the well that we take water. That idea is also there. So you can interpret in two different ways. This is what we call pun. So ambiguity or pun, right? Both can be identified as important, significant techniques actually related to this particular poem. So as literature students, you have to remember that the title itself is very much important when it comes to this poem, because this poem is a very difficult poem to understand. You have 7 stanzas. At the same time, you have to know about the political history of the country as well when it comes to this particular poem. So you have to pay your attention in this poem very carefully in order to understand this particular poem, right? I explained you what do you mean by pun. So I hope that you can understand. So both ideas are there. You can refer to pun. At the same time, you can refer to ambiguity as well. So that is the basic idea that I wanted you to understand. I wanted you to pay your attention. The title itself is very difficult to understand, right? Either it can be ambiguous, or else you may have different interpretations, or else you can refer to the idea of pun. That idea is also mentioned in here. Right. Now we are going to discuss about the history of this particular poem. I told you this poem can be identified. This poem actually comes under the category of Sri Lankan literature, right? So your syllabus, whatever the poems that you get, you can divide them into several categories like postmodern, and you have what you call Elizabethan poetry, romantic poetry. Now today we are going to learn about Sri Lankan poetry, right? So this particular incident is very much important to you. You have to pay your attention for this particular incident because this comes under the category of Sri Lankan poetry, right? So here we discuss about certain situations, certain incident which occurred in Sri Lanka, in the history of Sri Lanka. So in order to understand this poem, we have to know about the history of that particular incident. Otherwise, you will never be able to realize why this poem is written, right? What is the major experience that the poetess has actually received in order to write this poem? What kind of influence was there actually when it comes to the poetess in order to write this particular poem? So what provided that enthusiasm, right? What provided that influence in order to write this particular poem? So this is what we are going to discuss. So first and foremost, read very carefully and make sure to write down, because you don't know about this particular situation. You have not even heard about this because at that time period, you were not even born. So you don't know what actually happened, right? So it is better to know the political history of the country, because this particular poem is a political poem, right? This particular poem is a political poem. So in order to understand the poem, you should know about the political history of our country. Without understanding the political history and political incidents of the country, you can't understand this poem. So we will pay our attention to the history of the incident. right? Now you all know what actually happened, the big match or else the Black July. So we should pay our attention why this particular incident occurred, what kind of other incidents actually affected to this particular problem. So all these things we should take into consideration when it comes to this particular incident. Right. The incident that seemingly sparked off the island anti-Tamil violence was an attack on the Sri Lankan army soldiers by the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam LTT in the north. So the situation actually occurred in Jaffna. At that time period, the Sri Lanka was suffering from terrorism, right? So the terrorism group was named to be LTTE. What do you mean by LTTE? Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam. They were known to be LTTE. So at that time period, those people were asking for a separate country, separate sovereignty from Sri Lankan government. So Sri Lankan army was actually having a battle with them. So it is kind of a brutal battle. So this particular incident also happened because of them, right? Because of LTTE. So what actually happened here in the north, 35 years ago on the night of 23rd of July, 23rd of July, actually this particular incident occurred, right? 23rd of July, members of the Tigers led by Velupille Prabhakaran. Velupille Prabhakaran is known to be the leader of LTTE, right? Velupille Prabhakaran is known to be the leader of LTTE, right? Velupille Prabhakaran and his deputy Sellakili Amman, right? Sellakili Amman and Prabhakaran, right? Deputy means the second leader. Second leader is known to be the Sellakili Amman. So both people actually connected together, the leader and the member, right? Sellakili Amman and the Prabhakaran ambushed an army patrol at the post box junction area, Tirunavillai, Jaffna, and killed Lieutenant Vas Gunarathne of Sri Lankan Light Infantry and 12 other soldiers. So what did they do? They actually attacked the Sri Lankan soldiers via Tirunavillai near post box junction. And Sri Lankan army never expected this. It was an ambush, right? They never expected this kind of attack. It was an ambush. So what actually happened from that particular ambush? 13 soldiers died from Sri Lankan army, including a lieutenant, Vas Gunarathne. 13 soldiers died. So this was actually planned by LTTE, right? Very much unfortunate incident. So 13 soldiers from Sri Lankan army died from this particular incident. This is what actually happened. This attack was actually organized by LTTE, right? Very much suffocating incident, right? These soldiers, they never thought that this ambush will occur. So it is very much natural when it comes to a war scenario, anything can happen anytime, right? Anything can happen anytime. So this is the opening part, opening situation. So you have to remember about this. This is something very much important. You have to pay your attention to this. Now, this is what happened. LTTE, set of LTTE, they got together and they planned an ambush and they attacked Sri Lankan army in Tirunavillai near the post box junction. 13 soldiers were killed, including Lieutenant Vas Gunarathne, right? So 13 soldiers died. So their ambush was a success. Then what happened? The government had already decided to publish, broadcast and televise the news about the 13 soldiers, and their bodies were brought to the Boralla cemetery for cremation. Now what actually happened? So this particular incident happened in Jaffna, right? So those bodies were taken to the Boralla cemetery for the cremation, right? For the cremation, those bodies were brought to the Boralla cemetery. And this particular incident was given some kind of publicity by the government. A huge publicity was given by the government using all these media, right? Print media, electronic media. They gave a huge publicity about this incident, right? Okay, 13 soldiers were killed, something like that. They gave a huge publicity. Try to understand the story. Yeah? Otherwise, you will never remember what actually happened in this poem. So you have to remember the story. So their bodies were taken to Boralla cemetery in order to do the cremation, right? So that is what actually happened at the very beginning, right? So this is what happened at the very beginning. So you have to remember how many soldiers, 13 soldiers were killed, and their bodies were actually brought to Boralla cemetery in order to do the cremation. So this is actually kind of a very much emotional situation for most of the Sinhalese, because like 13 soldiers together and without having a battle. Now, normally soldiers die when they face a battle, but here in this situation, without facing a battle, because this is an ambush, right? This is an ambush. They did not actually face the army. They directly attacked them, right? They hid somewhere and they attacked. That is what we call ambush. So the army never expected this. At the end of the day, 13 soldiers were killed and their bodies were taken to Boralla cemetery, right? So first and foremost, write down, then we will discuss what actually happened. Hurry up and write down. Make sure to pass me a message. Yeah, you can call it as a guerrilla attack as well, right? Okay, so then we will see what actually happened after that. Hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Right, if you have any questions, please pass me a message. Hurry up. Right. So how many of you are still writing? Please pass me a message. Now, I am explaining about the history of the incident, what actually happened, right? Before the big match, before the Black July, how this particular problem started. You take your time, that's fine. You take your time and write. That's totally fine. I just wanted to explain you the background, right? You take your time and write, because don't use the recording. Try to understand what I am trying to say here, right? Recording is there for you. That is true. But Puta, when you are participating for a lecture, it is the talent of the student to complete the note. You have to have that talent, Puta. You have to complete the note. Otherwise, when you are writing slowly, what will happen? You have not actually completed that competency level. You can't write actually 2.5 pages within 25 to 30 minutes. That is not going to happen. So you can't do like that. You have to write fast. Writing is a talent that a literature student should definitely acquire. Whether he or she likes that or not, within 30 minutes, you have to complete 2.5 pages with 4 quotations. Basically, you have to write 4 answers. which means altogether you are going to write 8 to 9 pages within 2 hours. So this is not an easy task. A normal average student won't be able to do that, right? That is why you are doing literature as a subject. So literature is difficult to do. Why it is difficult? Because you have to write fast. You have to think fast. You have to write fast. That is important, right? Okay, so we will move on to the next part, right? Okay, I hope that you guys have completed. Now, this is what actually happened. Try to understand this incident, Puta, because this is one of the most difficult poems that you have in the syllabus. 7 stanzas. Please read the poem very carefully. A long poem with 7 stanzas. This is not easy, right? This is not easy. So definitely you have to pay your attention, right? It is a must. It is a must that you have to pay your attention. So what actually happened in a nutshell, I will explain again, right? What actually happened. So the LTTE, or else we use the word Liberation Tigers of Tamil Leelam, right? The LTTE, the terrorist group, they attacked the Sri Lankan army, right? In Jaffna, Tirunelveli, 13 soldiers were killed. 13 soldiers were killed, including Lieutenant Vas Gunarathne as well. So these 13 soldiers, their dead bodies were actually brought to Boralla Cemetery in order to do the cremation, right? And most importantly, about this particular incident, a huge publicity was actually given. A huge publicity was given, right? A huge publicity, yeah? A huge publicity was given about this incident. So as a result of that, actually, a lot of people, they received some kind of awareness about this particular problem more than the other problems, because this was actually very much highlighted. This particular problem was actually very much highlighted. So people who lived at that time period, they were very much aware about this particular incident, because using print media or else electronic media, right? They highlighted this particular situation. This is what actually happened. Right. Okay. I hope that you guys have completed. We will move on to the next part. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Right. I hope you guys have completed. Now what happened? Their dead bodies were actually brought to Boralla Cemetery, right? All the 13 soldiers, their dead bodies were brought to Boralla Cemetery. A large crowd actually came to Boralla Cemetery in order to witness the situation. How a lot of people actually came to this particular place, Puta, because of the broadcast. Because of the broadcast, right? So they, what do you call, using print media and electronic media, they gave a huge publicity for this particular situation, right? So as a result of that, a lot of people came to Boralla Cemetery in order to witness this particular cremation. That is what actually happened. And most of them were Sinhalese. Most of them were Sinhalese, right? Not Tamil people. Most of them were Sinhalese, right? So this is what actually happened. Now you have to pay your attention very carefully. Yeah? Make sure to remember the incident, right? Okay. As large crowds gathered at the cemetery with people being transported in government vehicles for the funeral, the mood began turning ugly. So people were transported from government vehicles, right? So this particular incident was planned by the government. This particular incident was planned by the government, right? So people were transported using vehicles, right? So a lot of people came. It was like a election campaign. Can't you understand? During the election campaigns also, this is what we witness in Sri Lanka, right? During the election campaigns also, this is what we witness in Sri Lanka. So government, what did they do? They used all these vehicles and they asked people to come to this particular place. They provided transport as well. Now, this is very much important, right? And the mood began turning ugly. What do you mean by that? Mood began turning ugly. So when a lot of Sinhalese actually got together, they had a different mood actually. They were under the impression that, okay, these soldiers were killed by those Tamils. Those Tamils, they never interpreted the word LTTE, because most of the members who engaged in LTTE talked in or else used Tamil language for their conversation, right? They used to have the word, okay, Tamils, right? These Tamils are the ones who actually did this kind of devastation. That was their mood, right? They thought like that because they did not specifically identify the LTTE, but they identified the people as Tamil people, right? That was the mood, right? The mood was turning ugly, right? So this situation is very similar to you. I can explain this situation very simply to you when we refer to the Easter attacks. Easter attacks in Sri Lanka, you were there. When Easter attacks occurred in Sri Lanka, you were there. Now, Saharan actually attacked. So Saharan was not actually a real Muslim. Saharan was not actually a real Muslim. He is an extremist, right? But what was the mood? What was the ugly mood that Sinhalese and Christians had? They came to the idea that, okay, Muslims have done this. Muslims have done this. This particular terrorist attack was done by Muslims. What was the reason? Because Saharan actually believed Islam, or else he was a Muslim. But the reality was totally different. Saharan was not a Muslim. Neither he followed Islam, right? He is a different type of a character who had some kind of extremist ideas, right? So he's a different character. But what was the impression? What was the first impression, right? So Sinhala people and Catholic people, they thought that, okay, Muslims are the ones who are actually organizing this particular attack. Just like that. At that time period, what actually happened? Majority of Sinhalese thought that Tamils are the ones who are actually planning this situation. Because at that time period, LTTE used the Tamil language for their communication. So they came to a, conclusion that, okay, right, Tamils, right, because of this minority only, these young soldiers died because of this minority. That is what we call the mood turned ugly, right? Same thing happened to us during the Easter attacks, right? We all had the idea that, okay, all the Muslims are responsible because Saharan was a Muslim. But later we got to know that Saharan was not a Muslim. Saharan did not follow Islam. He's a different type of a character with different type of mindset. But initially, that was the idea we got. Whether you like it or not, that was the idea, right? That was the idea. We thought that all the Muslims are terrorists. That is what we thought, right? So innocent Muslim people, they could not go to even their schools. They could not they could not do their businesses, right? They faced number of harassments. At the end of the day, most of the people understood that, no, all the Muslims are not responsible. Same thing happened in 1983. Here, during the Easter attacks, right, we thought just like that about the Muslims. In 1983, we thought like this about Tamils, right? That is what actually happened. Scenario is very similar. Right? This situation was exacerbated by the speeches of prominent Buddhist monks. Exacerbated means actually it was influenced, or else it was accelerated. The situation was accelerated by the speeches of prominent Buddhist monks. Right now, certain Buddhist monks also came to the cemetery and they gave their speeches regarding the Sinhalese, right? So then what actually happened, right? From their speeches, the situation actually became uglier. The mood was very ugly and it became uglier. That is what actually happened, right? So at that time, Inspector General of Police Rudra Rajasingham along with DIG Irene Pereira, at that time period, they were the officials of the police, and they understood the situation. They understood that, okay, the mood is getting uglier. We should take some action, right? Because by listening to these speeches and by engaging in this particular situation, there can be some kind of a conflict. They identified that. They understood that. They realized that. Who understood that? Right? IGP Rudra Rajasingham and DIG Irene Pereira. They are the ones who identified the particular situation. And then what did they do? Right? They went to the cemetery and realized the situation was very fragile. Fragile means about to break. Anything can happen. So soon after Saharan's attack, what actually happened? Sinhalese and Christians were ready to start a communal clash. But fortunately, it did not occur because of the social media and because of intelligent boys and girls. It did not happen, right? Otherwise, the next big match will occur during the Saharans attack, right? But fortunately, it did not happen. So, however, these policemen, they understood that the situation was very fragile. Anything can happen. So, what we should do, right? What we should do in this kind of situation, the IGP then went personally to vote place and asked President Jayawardena. At that time, J.R. Jayawardena was actually ruling the country. So he went to meet President J.R. Jayawardena and asked him to declare curfew on Sunday night. So he said that, sir, situation is very fragile. Most probably there will be a conflict between Sinhala and Tamil people. The situation is not nice. So it is better to have curfew. Let's have curfew because then nothing will happen actually. People will be inside the houses and nothing will happen to anyone. That is the best decision that we can take. Actually, that should be the best decision. According to the time period, accordingly, definitely that is the best decision that we should take at that time period, right? But what happened? This was not done. So J.R. Jayawardena said that, no, I am not going to impose curfew, right? If you can't actually keep the peace and harmony of the country, that is your problem. I am not going to impose the curfew, right? People can actually express their expressions. That is totally fine, right? That is totally fine. So even though the IGP and even though the DIG understood the situation, unfortunately, J.R. Jayawardena did not understand the situation. He did not think that the situation was very fragile and anything can happen. He did not bother actually. He did not bother. This is what actually happened. He did not bother. So as a result of that, what actually happened, later we will see what actually happened. Now you know what actually happened. A lot of people came to the cemetery. They saw the dead bodies of these people, and a lot of monks also came to the situation. And they gave a lot of patriotic speeches that actually influenced the situation, or else that actually accelerated the situation furthermore. So then policemen, they thought that, okay, definitely it will be a conflict. It will turn into a conflict. So before that, it is better to impose curfew. So they requested from J.R. Jayawardena to impose curfew. But the president said, no, I am not going to impose curfew. I'm not going to do that. So this is what actually happened in the history, right? Then we will see what will happen, right? Okay, hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Incidents are very important. Characters are very important because I am pretty sure, right? Because I'm pretty sure in your schools, right, the teacher will not give you this history. So definitely the students should be very much aware of that history. So that is important, right? That is very much important. Right, please pass me a message if you have finished. Hurry up. Try to understand the story and then make sure to write down. Don't write down anything without having proper knowledge. This is one of the most difficult poems. That is why I am explaining you the history. Now, you know it, this is about Black July, but you don't know what is Black July. First and foremost, you should know what is Black July, how that actually occurred. That history should be known to you. That history should be known to you. Otherwise, you will never be able to understand the poem, right? That history should be known to you. That is the most important part. You should know about the history of the incident. That is important. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Right, okay. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Right, okay. We will move on to the next part. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Right, okay. So we will move on, right? So now you know what actually happened. Now the situation is getting uglier, right? A lot of people actually, they came to witness the situation, and they were under the impression that all these 13 soldiers were killed by Tamils. That was the initial message actually received by them. Can you understand? That was the initial message. Same thing happened during the Easter attacks, right? The initial message actually received by Sri Lankans, okay, Muslims, they are the ones who did that. That was the initial message. Whether you like it or not, that was the truth. Whether you like it or not, we have to agree with that. So the policemen, they understood the situation and they said that, okay, dear President, now the situation is getting uglier, so definitely we have to impose curfew. Then only we can save these innocent people. Otherwise, definitely a conflict will occur because situation was very fragile. That is what they informed. But unfortunately, J.R. Jayawardena did not impose curfew. As a result of that, then what actually happened? Let's pay our attention. The situation took a violent turn around dusk on Sunday. Mobs began moving in the direction of Boralla and Timirigasyaya from the cemetery. So then what actually happened? The situation was actually very much dangerous. Mobs means actually different types of people who had different types of weapons on them, and they started walking towards Boralla to Timirigasyaya. Now they started to destroy all the property which were belonged to Tamils. What was the reason? The reason was like they believed all these 13 soldiers were killed by Tamil people. They never thought about LTTE. They never understood the difference between LTTE and innocent Tamils. So they were under the impression that, okay, right, this particular brutal action was done by LTTE, and this was done to our Sinhala community. All the 13 soldiers were belong to the Sinhala community. So we should take the revenge, right? That was the mentality. So most of the people were led by emotions. They did not think logically. They did not think comprehensively about this particular problem. So they were driven by their emotions. So they thought that we should take revenge. That was the idea. They thought that we should take revenge. Then what did they do, right? Directions of Boralla and Timirigasyaya from the cemetery. Tamil homes and businesses were attacked and set on fire. Right? So they started the destruction. They started the violence. The people who collected there, the majority of the Sinhalese, whether you like it or not, we have to accept that. Right? Majority of Sinhalese, they were actually influenced, they were motivated by the politicians, because I told you that even vehicles were actually provided for their transportation, right? So these opportunistic politicians, they are the ones who actually motivated them to do this. Then what actually happened, right? Tamil homes and businesses were attacked and set on fire. As the Asala full moon shone brightly from a not so cloudy sky, clouds of smoke from burning Tamil establishments spiraled upwards, right? So the situation actually happened on Asala full moon Poya day, right? Very recently, right? Month of July, right? Asala full moon Poya day. So then they started actually burning all the properties and houses. They actually killed brutally all these Tamil people because they wanted to take revenge. So the situation became, now the situation became a racial conflict. Now the situation became a racial conflict. A lot of people came to the cemetery. They understood the situation. They thought they were misunderstood. They thought that, okay, this destruction was done by Tamils, right? So we should teach them a lesson. We should teach them a lesson. So how did they teach the lesson? How did they teach the lesson? They actually burnt all the houses, all the businesses, and everything which were belonged to Tamils. Now, basically, nearby Boralla Timirigasya, a lot of Tamil people lived. Even today, a lot of Tamil people live there, right? So at that time, they were known to be the minority, but today we don't have that minority and majority. But at that time period, Sinhalese thought that we are the majority. We can do anything in this country. Since because we are the majority, we can't do anything that we like. As Sinhala students, you have to understand that. As Sinhala Buddhists, we have to understand that Sri Lanka is known to be a multicultural, multi-religious, heterogeneous society. Since because we are the majority, we can't do anything that we like. We have to understand that this is what actually happened. Majority of the Sinhalese thought that they can do whatever the things that they like. Even politicians actually backed them. That is what actually happened. They supported them, right? So then what happened, as the full moon shone brightly from a not so cloudy sky, clouds of smoke from burning Tamil establishments spiraled upwards. This communal clash brought a black mark to our country. Hence, it is known to be the Black July, or in Sinhala, Kalu Julia. Even the background is black. Even the background is black. So this particular incident, this particular communal clash, this is how the communal clash was started. Sinhala people were furious after seeing this particular cremation, and then they started the violence. As a result of that, actually, it brought a black mark to our country. The incident actually happened in July, so it is known to be the Black July. Or else in Sinhala, it is known to be the Kalu Julia. You can ask from your parents. Your parents may give a lot of experiences related to their lives. You can ask from them, and they may have a lot of experience about this particular situation. This is the situation that we are going to discuss in this particular poem. But without having a proper understanding about the situation, you will never be able to understand the poem. Now you know the history. You know this particular incident actually occurred due to a political agenda, due to a political propaganda. So we discuss about that. So those are the most important points that we have to pay our attention. So hurry up and finish it off. From here, we are going to complete the history of this particular incident. Now you know what actually happened. Now you know what do you mean by Black July. Now you know why this particular incident occurred. Now from here onwards, we will discuss about the situation and the repercussions of the situation. Hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Hurry up. Please pass me a message. If you have finished, take your time and write down. Make sure to understand the history of the incident. Most of the classes that they don't explain actually what happened in this particular situation. So as literature students, it is a must to know about the incident, right? So you should know about the incident, what actually happened. Then only you have to pay your attention towards the explanation, right? Right, okay. So I hope that you guys have completed. Is there anyone who is still writing? Now you know about the history of this particular incident. Now we can move on to the story. Right. Okay, we will move on to the poem now. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Right, okay. Even after curfew was in force, the violence went on for 3 days, peaking on Wednesday 27th and ebbing on Thursday 28th, the day that Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi sent then Indian Foreign Minister P. Narasimham Rao as her special emissary to Colombo, right? So in order to save these innocent people, there was no any proper mechanism, because even politicians backed up the situation because they wanted to create some kind of segregation between Tamils and Sinhalese. Sinhala majority, Tamil minority. Then politicians can take the maximum advantage from that. Actually, SWRD Bandaranaike took the maximum advantage from that. Still, most of the politicians, they use language and religion, language and nationality as their political weapons in order to get votes. Most of the political parties, if you refer to in Sri Lanka, they were based on either religion or else nationality or else the language. Ilangai Tamil Arasukach, right? Tamil. Bodubala Sena, based on Buddhism and Sinhala community, right? Then you have Sri Lanka Muslim Congress, Muslim, based on the community. So likewise, you can clearly understand most of the political parties, most of the politicians, they wanted to take the maximum advantage, political advantage from this situation. So they never wanted to stop this particular communal clash. They never wanted to put an end to this particular communal clash, because then they can go to the next election and then they can say that this kind of communal clash actually occurred because of the problems of the public. If you vote us, we will definitely secure your security, and they can get the votes. Can you understand? Muslim politicians, Islam politicians can tell like that. Tamil politicians can tell like that, and Buddhist politicians, Sinhala politicians can tell something like that. So at the end of the day, they can get the votes. So can you understand the propaganda behind this? Can you understand the conspiracy behind this? You should understand the conspiracy and the propaganda behind this. So what actually happened? The curfew was actually enforced, but unfortunately, the situation actually continued for more than 3 days, right? The situation actually continued for more than 3 days. This is what actually happened, right? The violence went on 3 days, peaking on Wednesday 27th, right? and ebbing on Thursday 28, the day that Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. So when Indira Gandhi understood that there is no end to this particular situation, what did she do? She sent, right? She sent an agent from India in order to check about these Tamil people, because most of the Tamil people came from India to Sri Lanka, right? In order to work in these tea plantations, they came as actually slaves. Later, they actually completed their education and they climbed up the social ladder. That is a different situation, right? So Indira Gandhi, she sent a special agent, Narasingh Rao, in order to find out about this particular situation. But at that time, most of the damage was done. Most of the people were killed, right? Most of the damage was done for the property. So this is what actually happened more than 3 days, right? The situation actually continued more than 3 days all around the country. The police or else the army, they were not able to actually stop the situation. They couldn't actually control the situation. And even the politicians did not take any steps, right, to prevent the situation, because they needed this kind of a communal clash between the different types of nationalities, because then only they can get the political advantage, right? They always needed to get that political advantage based on the religion, based on the language, based on community, anything, right? So they took the maximum advantage, and even today they do the same thing. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Hurry up. Yeah, exactly, Onaksha. The Tamil people who left to other countries are known to be the diaspora. I don't know whether you have heard that particular word. Most of the Tamil citizens, they went to other countries like Canada, UK, United States, right? Those set of Tamils who went to other countries, Onaksha, they were known to be diaspora. I don't know whether you have heard that word, right? Diaspora. It is a very popular word actually used in television as well. So those people were still angry. Those people were still suffering because of this particular action. So that is what I said. That is what I said. Because of this particular action, right? The repercussions can be still seen, even though the action occurred in 1983, right? This is 2023, but still we suffer, right? But still we suffer from this particular situation. This is what we have to understand, right? The suffocation actually undergone by people, right? So still they have the vengeance. Still they have the vengeance against us, right? So the situation was very much terrible. So this is what you have to understand. Yeah, now the thing is, Akil, like in order to stop the situation, Akil, right? The politicians should give some kind of what do you call advisors, or else some kind of ideas should be given to these forces, right? The forces cannot actually take their own decisions and they can't act, right? The proper orders should be given by the politicians, but politicians did not bother to give orders. They did not bother to give orders, right? Because they like this to happen. Even today, most of the politicians, they really enjoy when Sri Lankan citizens, when they divide into different groups and when they are having a conflict based on religion, based on language, based on nationality, they really enjoy that because they know that they can take maximum advantage from that. That is why they like it, right? It's a very difficult poem to understand, Puta. So please pay your attention now. This is what actually happened for more than 3 days, Puta. The situation actually continued for more than 3 days. It's a very much suffocating situation, right? Nobody expected this kind of situation. It went on for 3 days, right? Continued for 3 days. Right. I hope that you guys have completed. We will move on to the next part, Pudha. Right. Yes, most of the attacks were actually done by citizens. Actually, this is a very good question. Most of the attacks were actually started by Sinhalese, right? Most of the citizens, but it was actually took to the next level by the mobs who were actually supported by politicians. Now, when it comes to the situation, it was started by citizens. That is the truth. But they did not continue for a long period of time, for more than 3 days. Obviously, they did not do that. But once they have started, it was continued by organized thugs and mobs. They were backed up by politicians. That is what actually happened. They were backed up by politicians, right? It was done by organized thugs and mobs. They were backed up by politicians. That is what actually happened. This is what you have to understand. So later they realized that they have done something wrong, but it was too late then. Now the majority of Sinhalese, they were the ones who actually started this. There is no doubt about that. But they did not want to continue this for more than 3 days. They never wanted to continue this for more than 3 days. Can you understand? So then after that, what actually happened? These opportunistic politicians, they hired certain thugs and mobs, and they are the ones who actually continued the situation for more than 2 days. Can you understand? This is what actually happened. So they were really upset, right? They were really upset because of the actions that they have done. Only the situation actually grew into the next extent at the end of the day. They were really upset, but can't help because it was too late, right? So citizens actually initiated, and after that it was continued by the organized mobs and thugs. The entire poem is written based on the communal clash that occurred in Sri Lanka. The beauty of the poem is how the poetess has emphasized the different angles, right, related to the situation. The 7 stanzas of the poem expound about 7 different situations related to this incident. So in this particular poem, we discuss about 7 different situations. If you pay your attention, you will realize that we discuss about 7 different situations related to this particular communal clash. But she has not mentioned the word communal clash. She has not mentioned the word Black July. She has not mentioned that word. So when we read the poem, we can understand she is actually explaining about that. In order to explain, in order to understand that, we have to read this. Can you understand? We have to read the poem. So that is why I gave you a very solid background about this particular situation, the political incident, and then it will be very much easier for you to understand the poem after getting that solid background. So in this poem, she discusses about that particular communal clash, what kind of results, or else we can use the word repercussions, actually that particular situation brought to Sri Lanka. And as a result of that, what kind of problems actually occurred between the communities. And even today, we can see certain results, certain repercussions of that particular problem. So the communal clash actually occurred at that time period, created number of problems in this society. Even though you and me are not facing those problems, right? For a long period of time, Sri Lankan citizens had been facing all these problems for a long period of time, right? So this is what actually politicians needed, and that is what actually they have achieved from this particular incident. So the poetess is actually critically, cynically criticizing about these politicians. She is cynically criticizing about these politicians, right? So she is not actually putting the blame on Sinhalese or Tamils. She is actually criticizing the irresponsible behavior of politicians, the opportunistic behavior of these politicians, right? So hurry up and write down. We will move on to the poem. Please pass me a message after completing. Mobs are not Puta, religious leaders. Mobs means Puta, you hire some people by giving money in order to do something violence. They are not monks, right? Monks are actually people who are wearing these robes and everything. Mobs are actually organized thugs. They will do anything and everything for the sake of money. They are not to be mobs. They are not monks. Mobs and thugs means people who do anything and everything for the sake of money. Most of the politicians, they are the ones who hire them, right? Organized thugs, right? Right, okay, we will move on to the next part. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Shall we move on to the next part? Right, okay. Do you need more time, Puta? Right, okay. I hope that you guys have completed. Right. Let's move on to the poem. So we are going to discuss line by line. I have numbered those lines. Then I hope that you can very easily understand about which line I am talking about. So I have numbered them, but in your poem, I think they have not numbered that. Right. So I have numbered them. Then you can very easily understand about which part that I am discussing. So let's pay our attention to the first 4 lines. This is how the poetess has started the poem. Glimpsing the headlines in the newspapers. So she is starting with the print media, right? Glimpsing the headlines in the newspapers. Tourists scuttle for cover, cancel their options. Now she discusses about tourists who came to Sri Lanka, right? Right now, after seeing the newspapers, these tourists are actually cancelling their options. They came to Sri Lanka to see the beauty of our country. Sri Lanka is known to be a very beautiful country with flora and fauna and different types of wild animals, right? Waterfalls and everything, right? It is known to be the pearl of the Indian Ocean, but now it has changed due to this communal clash. This is how actually tourists reacted, right? If you can remember during the Saharans attack, the same way tourists actually, they never came to our country. We saw that what kind of dilapidation that occurred when it comes to tourist industry, right? As an industry, it actually destroyed because of the Saharans attack. Same thing happened here, right? So the poetess is actually explaining about that. On rooms with views of temple and holy mountain. So temple and holy mountain refers to the temple of Tooth. The Dalada Maligawa is actually highlighted here, temple. And the holy mountain means the Adam's Peak. Sripa there, Adam's Peak, right? So the tourists wanted to go to these places and they wanted to enjoy the beauty, the flora and fauna and the natural beauty of these places, right? The beauty of the ambience. But now they are trying to go back to their countries as soon as possible because they have understood the danger of this communal clash. Flashpoint in paradise, racial pot boils over. So Sri Lanka is once known to be a paradise. Now it has become the flashpoint in paradise. Flash means that you are giving the highlight. You are highlighted that particular paradise. Now the paradise is highlighted not because of something beautiful. Now previously, Sri Lanka was known to be a very beautiful island because of the flora and fauna and the beauty of the environment. But now Sri Lanka is highlighted because of the communal clash. Racial pot boils over. Now the racial pot boils over, right? Racial pot means all the communities, all the races are living together. Sinhalese, Muslims, Tamils, Christians, Burghers, Malays, they all are living together in this pot. But now what has happened? It is actually boiling over. It is actually boiling over. This is what actually happened. So this is my explanation about the first 4 lines. Let's move on to some kind of a proper explanation. What are the things that you have to pay your attention? You can write down, my dear students. Glimpsing. What do you mean by glimpsing? Catch sight of. In simple English, glimpsing means catch sight of, right? Catch sight of. The poetess discusses how the situation is described in printed media with eye-catching headlines. The poet says that how these media people actually behaved, how these print media behaved at that time period. They wanted to earn a lot of money. So in order to do that, what did they do? They actually used the bold, glimpsing headlines, right, in their newspapers in order to sell their newspapers, right? Then a lot of people will buy their newspapers. They never wanted to provide the solution for this problem. Even in the disastrous situation, they wanted to uplift their profit margin. They wanted to uplift their profit margin. This is what she says, right? The poetess discusses how the situation is described in printed media with eye-catching headlines. Glimpsing means catch sight of, with eye-catching headlines. Scuttle. Right, we will move on to explanation. I am really sorry for the inconvenience. Right, okay, I hope that you guys can see the screen. I was explaining about the situation, right? So the glimpsing means catch sight of. The poetess discusses how the situation is described in printed media with eye-catching headlines. Scuttle means you are running with short, quick steps. Now here the reaction of the tourists who came to Sri Lanka to enjoy the natural beauty of the country. They came to see the natural beauty of the country. Now try to run hurriedly due to the sudden communal clash. They have cancelled their tickets, options, and rooms, right? So from the first four stanzas, the poetess has clearly depicted us about the situation of media when it comes to this kind of communal clash, how media behaved, what kind of responsibility that they completed, right? So they never actually thought about our people or about the situation, right? The only thing that they paid their attention was actually the only thing that they thought was actually about their profit margin. So the poetess is very much critical about the behavior of media, Puta. The poetess is very much critical, very much cynical about the behavior of media. This is not actually how the media should behave. This is not, according to the poetess, this is not how the media should behave. They should be more responsible than this. But what did they do? They used all these glimpsing headlines in order to take the attraction of the audience, attraction of the readers, because then they can sell a lot of newspapers. That is what they did. After that, the poet is actually paying attention towards the tourists who came to Sri Lanka, right? This is how they behave, right? Now they actually try to cover themselves. They ran here and there in order to cover themselves from the communal clash. They came here to see the natural beauty of this particular country, but now they try their level best to go back to their countries. They cancel their tickets, their options, and their rooms. Okay, hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message if you have finished. Hurry up. I need 5 students to complete this. Hurry up. Please pass me a message. Right. So I hope that you guys have completed. So we will move on to the next part. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Hurry up. Right. Make sure to be in the class. Right. If you think that this is a very boring and you can't understand, make sure to give up the subject. You will never learn like this, because I'm pretty sure in your schools, they never explain you like this. In most of the schools, they don't actually explain you the history of this particular incident even. Right. So definitely you have to know about the political history of Sri Lanka in order to understand this. In the upcoming stanzas, you will realize how important to know the political history of the country as well. That is very much important. You will realize that. Okay, right. Hurry up, Kuta. Please pass me a message after completing. I need 5 students to complete. Hurry up. Right, okay. I hope that you guys have completed. We will move on. Right, okay. Shall we move on to the next part? Right, okay. So time is enough. Right. Views of temple and holy mountain. Views of temple and holy mountain is referred to as the temple of truth and Adam's Peak. Right. One of the famous tourist destinations in Sri Lanka. Tourists have identified the seriousness of the racial conflict and now they have cancelled their bookings to visit these places, right? So tourists have understood that it is not good enough or else it is not secure enough to see the beauty of these places, right? It is better to cancel these trips to these places and it is better to survive rather than actually visiting these places. Now, the poetess is discussing here, my dear students, like what kind of damage this particular incident was actually done to the tourist industry, right? I don't have to explain you how much like number of people are actually surviving due to the tourism, right? The industry of tourism. So the poetess clearly explains here, right? So due to this particular incident, the entire tourism industry was fallen, right? That is what actually happened. So hurry up and write down. So here the views of temple and holy mountain refers to the temple of truth and the Adam's Peak. So hurry up and complete. We have to understand the situations like one by one because the poem is very difficult to understand. So I will explain. Right. How many of you are still writing? Please pass me a message. Others, please hurry up. Right. Okay. Right. Shall we move on to the next part? I hope you guys have completed. Is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. I hope not. Right. Okay. So we will move on. Right. Flashpoint in Paradise, racial pot boils over. Following are the news headlines used by print media to attract the audience. Sri Lanka is compared to a racial pot. A racial pot is a sociological term which is used to show the unity of the different races living together, but it has boiled over. So racial pot, the word racial pot is very much important here, my dear students. By using the word racial pot, it is actually used in sociology, right? Racial pot refers to lot of citizens, like lot of citizens who belong to different types of communities, different types of races and religions. They live together in harmony. That is what we call the racial pot. Now what has happened? The racial pot boils over, which means that there is no unity at all. So the poet tries to explain the fact that previously Sri Lanka is known to be a prosperous nation. Previously, Sri Lanka is known to be a nation with a lot of unity. But now it has changed, right? Now everything has changed. Due to these opportunistic politicians, due to this particular incident, everything has changed. This is what she discusses, right? So the part is very much important. Flashpoint in paradise, racial pot boils over, can be taken as news headlines, right? These are the news headlines actually used by these print media in order to get the attraction of the people. Because even in this disastrous situation, they wanted to earn a lot of money. They wanted to sell their newspapers, right? So that is what they did. So they did not think about the innocent citizens, right? They wanted to earn a lot of money. So that is what they did. Right. Please pass me a message if you have finished. Hurry up. Right. Okay. So with that thought, we will wind up the session. Tomorrow you have classes. Make sure to join. Same link can be used. We are doing Vendor of Sweets by RK Narayan. Make sure to join the class at 1 o'clock. You can use the same link. If you have finished, you can leave the meeting. Thank you so much. The recording will be available tomorrow.